Hi, my name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. Peter in the book of Acts, chapter 10, says something quite remarkable. He says, God has no favorites. God shows no partiality to any group of people. And you may be thinking, well, of course God doesn't show partiality to any particular group of people. But we can only say that 2,000 years after the fact because of the history that shaped us. And in fact, there's a lot that goes on in the world that belies this truth. Lots of people think that God does show partiality to certain groups of people, certain tribes, nations. For instance, the United States often talks about the fact that God bless America, that God has a unique blessing, a certain kind of exceptionalism that comes from God's unique blessing upon them as a people, that sets them apart from all the other nations on the earth. Or ISIS, at the core of their propaganda is this understanding that only certain kinds of Muslims worshiping God in certain kinds of ways enjoys Allah's blessing. And there are hard right groups in Israel that believe that God has a unique, special blessing for the Jew that privileges them to certain parts of the West Bank. And there are lots of Christian groups that believe that God has a unique or special blessing for them that sets them apart, not just from other religions, but from other Christians as well. And you don't even have to keep this focused exclusively on religion. I think any kind of ideology can easily get to the point where it privileges people in their belief that they have a unique blessing or perspective on life. 2,000 years ago, when Peter said these words, it was just commonly understood that God or the gods had a special blessing for that particular group of people. The argument might have been who the gods blessed, but the idea that God had a special blessing was understood. And every tribe and every nation had their own special gods. These gods were understood to bless only that tribe or that nation. And if you were outside of the tribe or nation, well, too bad. The Jews understood themselves as being God's chosen people. Understand that every nation and every tribe in the ancient world understood themselves to be God's chosen people, people who were meant to receive a special blessing from heaven. For the Jew, it was understood that this special blessing brought with it certain restrictions, what we might call holiness codes, purification codes, that kept the Jew separate from the broader world. Certain dietary restrictions that made it impossible for them to eat with people outside their faith. Or certain holiness codes that made interacting with that Gentile world, literally the ethnos, the ethnic world out there, impossible. And so Jews, when they would gather in large cities throughout the Roman Empire, would form these little enclaves and keep themselves separate from the broader population. Jesus himself was a Jew. His followers were Jews. His enemies were Jews. He talked in a really Jewish way to Jewish concerns. The earliest church was all Jewish. The initial converts in Acts 4 were all Jewish. Those initial missionaries, Paul and Barnabas and a whole host of others, were all Jewish. They went out to the Jewish synagogue out in this major urban centers of the Roman Empire and proclaimed a Jewish Messiah to Jewish people. And yet, somehow, Gentiles picked up on this message. They heard about the kingdom of love, and they heard about Jesus' miracles and his teachings, and they understood and heard about his sacrificial death and his resurrection and his abiding presence in the Holy Spirit, and they wanted to join up. And the earliest church had no idea what to do with these people. They were never part of the whole plan in the first place, part of their consciousness. And Jesus obviously hadn't given them any instruction on what to do with the Gentiles. So they are deliberating, struggling over what to do with them. And Peter gets invited to a Gentile home by a man named Cornelius. And when he gets there, he sees this throng of Gentiles who wants to know more about Jesus. They want to sign up. And he looks around the room, and in spite of his Jewish sensibilities, he says these amazing words. It's obvious to me now that God has no favorites. God shows no partiality to one tribe, one group of people over another. And in that moment, revolution sets in. And that tribal way of thinking is beginning to fall apart. Peter's a Jew, but now he sees a new way of understanding the world. He has a new perception to see who his neighbor really is. And it includes not just his Jewish compatriots, but also the Gentile world out there. We're part of one family, he understands. And he invites us who follow him, in following Jesus, to embrace our brother or sister, whoever they might be, not based on tribal identity or tribal familiarity, but based on the common understanding that we are all God's children.